My level of frequency now is such that the baddies can jump up, but they can't get up there.
Wow.
The
Okay.
darkness, with the, because we're within the third dimension is called the night.
Yeah.
Within the night there is darkness. Those darknesses are just beings, souls that have lost their way, that have lost the
Yeah.
light, and all they're looking to do is to, like a moth goes to a flame. As soon as
Yeah.
you raise your frequency, you increase your light. And they go, ooh, free energy, whoosh, right?
Yeah.
It's just a misunderstanding. So if you raise your frequency above that, eventually those dark energies can't get to you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Spiritual Talk. Tonight we've got something a little different tonight. I'm so excited to our next guest. He offers so much, and I was quite excited that he said yes to come on. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Philippe Roels. Hi, Philippe, and welcome to Spiritual Talk.
Paul, thank you very much for the invite. Greatly appreciated.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Well, I kind of want you to tell us about what you do, because you've had some interesting experiences over the past, and where you're at now. We'd love to know what's happening.
Yeah, so we spoke a little while ago, and things have. I've had new contact, new connections in the last week, which has
Oh,
not changed anything for people directly, but has changed my personal mission, and something that I was aware of, but it's not something I was actually concerned about or actually followed or actually endeavored to actually, check up on. So, but a little bit about that in a moment. But initially, let's call it my mission is to actually assist people in raising their awareness, especially in these difficult times, in these changing times. And so I was a long, long time ago. I was given the information, or downloaded the information that helps people to clear their pathway towards ascension. So how do we do that? It's like facing fear, working through that, understanding it, and basically becoming a master of fear instead of being a current slave of fear. And alongside that is raising our personal awareness and raising our personal frequency, which is a gateway towards, let's call it the ascension, right? For lack of a better term.
yeah,
2024, as we know, as everybody knows by now, is the year of change, right? And this has been
yeah,
happening.
yeah,
So there's been bits and pieces that has changed. And in the last week, I've been contacted by, and this surprised me, as I say, because I wasn't expecting this. I was contacted by the Galactic Federation of Planets. I was contacted by someone that's a member. And it was a surprise, as I say, because I wasn't expecting that at all.
wow,
And as you probably know, as a channel yourself, when you connect with Source or with your guides, you learn to feel the frequency. You learn to feel a certain feeling, a certain temperature, a certain experience.
yes,
When you connect to that frequency range, you get used
yeah,
to that range. And this was different. And I was surprised by that. And being who I am, I don't take nonsense from anybody. It doesn't matter who it is, Source or anybody. I always double check, verify. I don't just connect with anybody. So I asked all the questions, relevant questions. And the funniest thing is that this person actually spoke in my native language, which is French,
yeah,
which is another big surprise. Because normally I think in English, although I'm French of origin. So everything, all communication, spirit communication usually happens in English. This was different. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
a lot of flags here. This is now new. So what the heck is going on, right? And so cutting a long story short, the frequency was different. The feeling was, instead of a warm, low, gentle feeling, it was a higher frequency, more of a less bassy, more treble communication. which I thought, this is strange. I've never actually experienced that before. Then retrospectively, a couple of days later on, after I sort of sat down and examined the situation, I realized that all those aspects were actually meant to show me that this was not a spirit communication. This was an actual incarnate communication from somebody that is actually in physical.
Wow.
So that set off alarm bells. And also the messages and the personal stuff that I received that I obviously can't share at the moment, I thought challenged what I was teaching, what my initial mission was. And I was reassured that it doesn't challenge that. It actually complements, because my mission is to connect with people on a one-to-one personal level. And the
Yeah.
new mission on top of this current mission I have is we're now talking about planetary involvement. So it's like it's two halves of a story, let's say. So, and this is along those lines. So I was very surprised, and deep down I always knew there was this kind of thing, but it's nothing that I ever looked for and chased and investigated. So I was quite surprised to have this communication. And the very next day, I actually ended up moving my awareness and actually going on onto the craft and actually visiting and examining. I was given free range to see the technology, to see how things worked. So it was like, just completely different, right? I was given a warning that this discernment and discretion, because information that I'm going to be receiving needs to have a certain amount of discernment. Not everything can be shared, but can be trickled across when required. So yes, some changes, in my remit, as it were.
When we last spoke, one of your guides was you believed to be Thoth as well, if I've pronounced that correctly. Yeah. Now, Thoth is for those that know, there'll be lots of people that know who that is. But let's imagine there's a lot of people that don't know, Philippe. Can you explain who that is? Now, that's a pretty big guide to have.
Yeah, it is. And I think for us ego-based souls, when we talk big, we think big, we look for importance, right?
Yeah, of course.
We look, the bigger the name, the more important you are and the more important they are. But when you connect with someone like that, it feels no different to connecting to anybody else. Yeah. There's no hierarchy feeling. There's no grandiose feeling. It's just, your everyday communication, as you can probably attest to. But he, known as Thoth, which that name originated, it was actually a Greek name given by Greeks to the Egyptian gods. Originally, the original Egyptian name was Jehuti.
Yeah.
Which is the scribe, and he records the occurrences of the universe. So he's the wisdom keeper, basically. But his story goes back way beyond that, because he didn't just acquire this title, let's call it, per chance. He actually ascended during the Atlantean times. And during the Atlantean times, his name was Chequetet. And he studied under the hierarchy. There was three beings that brought messages from spirit and actually taught. They taught, I think it was 3 or 4 other beings below that were incarnate during the Atlantean times. And he was one of those students of those teachers. And he worked really, really hard and actually ascended during that period. And he was given the option of what he would choose to do with his existence, his experience after that. And he chose to assist mankind. He chose to bring knowledge to mankind. And hence, that grew from that. When Atlantis was eventually removed from existence, he and several others moved over to the land of Kem, which is the Egypt, the early Egypt, the Upper Egypt, closer to the earth, Ethiopian side. So he was the protagonist who started or began the Egyptian theology and the Egyptian knowledge, and actually began to enlighten the Egyptian people and brought those teachings. So
just
that's
on
the background.
Just on that question of who Thoth was, Am I right in saying he survived the destruction of Atlantis? You know, there's lots of
Yes, he did.
people that have ideas what happened to Atlantis. They even now, I was watching a program the other day. They believe they've potentially found where it could have been, which is super exciting because there's a lot of examples of texts where they've found in ancient texts where, well, I believe it's somewhere on the west coast of Africa. They haven't actually said where it is yet, but that sounds quite exciting. But I was told that Thoth was kind of keeping alive the knowledge that they had in Atlantis, to pass that on to the Egyptians, to bring that through so that civilization could restart again.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. So Atlantis initially was a series of 11, let's call them islands, 11 spaces. 10
Yeah.
spaces where people lived, and there was one king per space. And the 11th space was a space where the spiritual teachings happened, where only those that were deemed as being worthy of receiving the high teachings actually went and spent time with the higher teachers. So those, the 10 islands were the ones that originally disappeared first, and the last one to disappear. It was chosen at the time because of the way civilization wasn't going in the right way, was going the wrong way, was going too ego-based, technology-based. It was chosen to restart, and he was given task to take himself and some people and and he went across to East Africa, the Egyptian side, and
Wow.
basically restarted.
Yeah.
So the knowledge has never been lost. Knowledge is always present, right? It's always in spirit. It's always around us.
Yeah.
But it's can we
Yeah.
access? Are we actually elevated enough in frequency to actually receive that information? So he now currently no longer reincarnates, but makes himself available to people like myself to bring this information so that we can share that. So effectively, we're like his little disciples and saying, check this, check this, check this, check this, see this information. And it will resonate with certain people, which is the intention.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. I find it really hard to find people that would talk about Atlantis. Now, I don't know your depth of knowledge of Atlantis, but I wanted to ask, when you mentioned those 11 islands, were they in separate locations around the world?
I believe they were in separate locations. And to be honest with you, I don't know more than what I've just told you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not something that I've ever really sought after. I did a regression many, many, many years ago with someone, and I asked to be shown a life in Atlantis, and I saw buildings a bit like, these white painted buildings like you see in Greece, and that kind of, it was those kind of structures. But I don't know much more than that. And I've never been that interested for some reason. It's never been my sort of forte. My personal incarnations begin during the Egyptian times. I know 3 lives in that time. So my personal incarnations begin then and then move forward from there. So before that, my personal interest and personal knowledge doesn't actually include that.
That's really exciting. I know myself, I had a previous life as an Egyptian healer, I'm told, and been told by several different people. So when you start to be told by different people the same thing, you then start to take notice of that. And it wasn't until further down my development that I became aware of one of my guides that I was with at that particular time. But I struggled with that, Philippe. When I started to open, when I started to heal and meditate, I struggled with some of the concepts that I was picking up, so much so I kind of shut it down a bit. And there was something you said about Thoth recently that it dawned on me the other day that 20 years ago I saw something similar. And I do wonder if that's,
Right.
Thoth is available. The information is there for all of us.
Yeah. So you're absolutely correct. And I agree with you. The information is available for all of us. There's no such thing. When we talk about truth, there's no such thing as exclusivity. Right? And that's something that the ego needs to understand. Because if we're trying to make something exclusive, then we're going down the wrong road, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
This information is available to everyone. If you raise your frequency to a certain level, you will encounter this information. So
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
per chance, or there's no one special, or I was chosen, or yeah, we can think that, but it's an ego thing, right? The
Yeah.
information, it's like a layer. If you put a layer of cloud in the sky, if you fly up into those clouds, you will get the information. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. So it doesn't surprise me. And many people get glimpses where we get the sudden jump in frequency, where we access things and we go, ooh, what was that? And then we sink down again and we wonder, how did that happen, right? So
Yeah.
we get these glimpses. So, and that happens to many, many people, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, yeah. And those glimpses for me also happened in meditation. But the key thing here, in terms of what you offer, you've got to be at a certain frequency to be able to connect to this level, I guess. And what you do for people is helping
Yeah,
them to heal. Can we just
yeah,
connect to these higher frequencies? But we do need, I mean, I kind of know the answer already, but we do need to heal, Philippe, don't we? We need to release that. How do we
yeah.
begin that process of self-healing?
The biggest challenge for mankind is awareness. Because if you're not aware of something, you can't do anything about it, right? And so
Yeah,
how do we have to think about how do we gain awareness? So we gain awareness by gaining information,
yeah,
gaining teachings, searching for teachings. And this is where people like myself come into play, where we have a certain amount of experience and we understand the information and we can advise people and we can say to them, so look at this, look at that, what about this, what about that? Not giving them the answer, but giving them the method in how to find the answers. So it's
yeah,
about developing awareness, because we cannot take away the experience. If I take away your experience in evolving and discovering, I'm incurring karmic debt, and I'm not in the business of doing that. I'm only
yeah.
here to support, support people who support seekers who actually want to find, but are not sure how to get there. And this is what I do.
From a psychological point of view, so many of us are wrapped up in the experience from childhood, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And then, of course, our programming that we receive from our parents and school and religious ideology. And,
Yeah, yeah.
it's ongoing. How do we crack that shell?
So and this is the challenge, right? And there's one thing that when you talk about, there's one thing that stands out for me that comes to me from the message from Thoth Jehuti is that there's only one lesson for mankind: to conquer fear. Everything revolves around that. So we have to drill down psychologically into how do we work through that. So
Yeah,
my incarnation has such that I incarnated with certain tools, certain skills, where I have never done psychology, but in a previous life I did. And I came into this life with that ability. So I can help, I can drill down, I can hone into things. Just it's a natural thing for me, right? Plus I'm
yeah,
assisted. When I start talking to people and I start to hone in, I get the flow starts, information comes, as you're well aware. And so I switch from myself to guided information, which is pertinent to the person's particular situation. So it's a combination of skills that I've incarnated with and information that I've gathered due to awakening, due to enlightenment. So it's a mix. It's difficult to separate.
yeah, yeah. Because we get so caught up in whether we have an abandonment issue, whether we have an attachment style. And then we get
Yeah,
so caught up in romantic relationships within love itself. Some people talk about the whole
yeah,
experience of life being just about love and understanding all its different dynamics of love. But it's a bit more nuanced then. It's more about fear.
yeah, yeah. So as you say, you've touched on a very important point here, and this is the polarity between fear and love. Yeah, because we originally we are beings that come from a love environment. And I heard a very wonderful quote from somebody a while ago that said, we incarnate into this world so we can remember what it's like not to be God. So we can experience what it's like not to be God, not to be original. So we are as far away as you can get from being who we really are. And the mission is to journey back, right? It's to journey back. So souls learn, even though they don't incarnate, but souls learn a lot quicker, a lot faster if they incarnate. It's like a boosted level of evolution. And
Okay.
for souls to elevate themselves, so to
Yeah.
elevate yourself from the third dimension to the next dimension, there's a certain amount of qualification that is required.
I love
Yeah.
it.
So there's a
Yeah.
certain amount of testing. It's like you need to pass the exams to move to level up. And this is what we are. So we come here and people say, what's the meaning of life? Life has no meaning except what you give it. You give life meaning.
Yeah.
So which means you need to take responsibility. So
So,
there's a strange sort of thing about that, yeah? So if you want to
yeah.
evolve, you need to get involved, as it were. Yeah.
So, and again, through meditation, I've had experiences where I felt being complete and whole. But in some ways, that for me, that was quite overwhelming. But then I became aware that I was also individual. So I'm making an assumption in what you're saying here is that we incarnate to become individual, to potentially to understand what it is to feel the emotion, to have the experience. So then we come back to the whole again, bringing that experience back into the whole.
Absolutely. And it's about distancing yourself from the light and eventually finding your way back to the light, which is the unity consciousness experience, which is being one, right? I've had, several experiences because of, where I've been, etc. And the one thing that happened was probably about a year ago now, is that I experienced unity consciousness spontaneously. It was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It was like a seriously, oh my God moment. If you've experienced the state of bliss and expansion and the blissful feeling you get with expansion,
Yeah.
that is a personal expansion of awareness, of experience, and moving into the blissful and into the love experience. But it's not the same thing as unity consciousness, which I discovered per chance. I was visiting a friend who owns a store in my local town, and we were talking, and we talk on this kind of level. And somebody walked into her store and sort of earwigged and said, "Oh, you guys are talking about, what are you guys talking about?" And got involved. And then as we got involved, got talking, suddenly I experienced this unity consciousness. And with a blissful expansion awareness, it's like you expand from the heart center. It
Yeah.
pushes up past your jaw, and then your head expands, and then everything seems to expand outwards. So that's
Wow.
usually what happens with a blissful expansion event. With unity consciousness, this was different. I was shocked. It actually felt like the expansion happened like a donut expanding outwards, and then incorporated the auras of the other two people around me. And as it
Wow.
incorporated the auras of the other two people around me, I felt the warmth of their energy. And I got so excited, and I kept kicking myself when I have these experiences. I get so excited that I actually jolt myself out of the experience. Guys, you're never going to believe what just happened. So I actually lost, the full experience because I just get so excited when this new stuff happens.
Yeah.
But that was this weird expansion. It was the inclusion, it was the warmth, and suddenly our auras became one aura. It was such a powerful experience, to have.
Yeah. 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 Why do you think humanity, whether you've had, well, communication with Thoth or guides around the fear aspect? Because I'm told the basis of all fear is death. That was the beginning of life, that we feared death. and that was the biggest fear that mankind, and all fears then come from death. So is it, and again, when we incarnate, we have this individual experience, but let's face it, Philippe, most people don't believe in another realm of existence, let alone, a spiritual one that we're talking about.
Yeah, but that's changed, over the years. When I first started teaching my courses, one of the questions I asked when we were talking about fear was, what is your greatest fear? And as you've just mentioned, originally it was death, right? But things have changed. Now we've got people like yourself across YouTube, NDEs, OBEs, all these
Yeah,
experiences that people are having. Suddenly death is not the thing anymore
yeah,
because people are saying, oh, wow, it's not just me, right? I've had this experience, and people are validating each other's experiences. And I still ask the same question because I'm inquisitive to see how this has evolved. So the new answer is now not death itself, but how we die. Because
yeah.
Hollywood has created thousands of ways to kill people,
That's
right?
true.
So it's not
That
the
is
fact
true.
of dying, it's the fact of how much pain do I have to go through to die. That's the new fear at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. But also, I mean, I don't like the idea of being separate and on my own. I have a fear of being separated or separate and completely cut off. And now I know it's unrational, because I know I'm connected. I feel wherever that comes from. So what I'm trying to go with this,
Yeah.
dipping into past lives. Do we need to heal past lives? Or can we do that in the moment of now? Do we need to go back and visit some of the trauma and a lot of people do seem to have that experience. Even through meditation, they'll visualize a past life that was particularly difficult.
Absolutely, and that's you're absolutely correct in everything you've said, and it's how it works is because we're moving towards the ascension point,
Yeah.
and the ascension point is essentially where we need to be whole, we need to be one, and all our
Yes.
lives, and I'll talk about other lives, not past lives, because everything happens now. As lives are concerned, there's no past, there's no future. Everything happens in the moment.
Yeah.
So when we do this work, particularly on the course that I teach, is that we're working with every single life in this dimension. So we're doing a life review, only focused in this life because the awareness is in this life, in this time, but other traumas from other lives that haven't been resolved
Yeah.
bleed into this life. And they have to be resolved because we need to resolve all our personal frequencies across the whole dimension so that we can effectively move up in frequency into the next one. So as they say, in the war movies, leave no man behind, so we don't leave a life behind. You cannot move on unless you resolve all those traumas,
Yeah.
all those fear-based experiences. So they will bleed into in a number of ways, as you said, in meditation, in dreams, subconscious, and the stuff I do, the work I do is we actually take the subconscious and we bring it into the conscious so we can actually work with it. So there are ways around that, right? It's just finding your way how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wanted to talk a little bit about soul planning a little bit. If we are in the moment, does everything then come into this moment in terms of the karmic will? I'm thinking of Eckhart Tolle and obviously the power of now. But okay, I've had experiences where I've seen myself in different lifetimes, sometimes in dream state, sometimes coming in and out of dream
Yeah.
state, sometimes in meditation. Having said that though, interestingly, I've not seen future lives. There's another concept in itself. Is that something that we create in the moment, a future experience that potentially could have been there and was changed because we've self-healed? That's a question all in itself, Philippe.
So future lives is a big sort of a big mystery ball, right?
Yeah,
Future experience. And the biggest thing is if we look at now, we look at today, we look at the human experience, once you incarnate, it's like you're locked into this stream like a river, and you can only see so far ahead,
Yeah.
right? And that's essentially where we are. We cannot. I don't really like talking about future predictions because those are, for me, they're like elastic bands. They could happen today, they could happen tomorrow, they could happen in a week, depending on many things like intentions, like a group consciousness. We're having conflicts around the world at the moment. Those could be resolved at any time, or they could actually get worse depending on how the group consciousness reacts. So to predict or to say anything about the future, I personally myself don't actually like to go down that road because
Yeah.
I'm not experienced in that. Uh, but this is how I understand it.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with you. I'm aware of future from communication, but it's like I always liken it to like blue tack. You can make many different shapes. You've got the substance there, but it can go in a variety of different, ways, depending on how some of the decisions and ideas that come up.
Yeah,
So it's a difficult thing.
yeah.
I'm kind of like, I wish we had all the answers to help people. I know it's a very personal journey that we go on when we incarnate in this life. But is there
Yeah.
specific triggers or keys? Is it always around trauma that we start to self-heal?
So I think I have to look at the basic experience of man. And when we arrive in this life, this is a huge topic. When we arrive in
Yeah,
this life, as you probably know, the first 7 years of it's indoctrination, arriving and being told how to operate in this dimension and the laws and etc. So we get told this information, and we adopt fears, not by experience, but we told, don't go in the woods because there's a bear that's going to eat you. So we believe that. So we adopt all these fears, and we develop traumas that
yeah,
potentially aren't real. So when I
mm,
talk about in my course, I talk about two fears. There's the real fear, and there's the fear that we've created fear. The real fear, you open the door, there's a grizzly bear that's going to eat you. That's real fear, right? But if you open a door, there's a tiny spider. That's not real fear. That's just the phobia, right? And that's hand me downs, right? So that's just the basic.
yeah,
But unfortunately, we believe those and we make those our reality. And the ones we really hang on to, the ones we choose not to look at, the ones we shy away from, keep coming back to saying, "Hey, don't forget me," right? You go, "No, not today."
yeah,
Those eventually become traumas because we've run from them for so long that eventually they become these monsters that chase us. So that is something that we need to deal with and something that we need to accept. And the only way is to actually face those things and to realize that they're not real. You know,
yeah,
none of it is real. It's just a created thing that we've done, that we've created for ourselves, and things that we've been told. So that's the difficult part in any life in this dimension, because it's a fear-based dimension. This is always going to happen, right? As long as you have an ego, as long as you incarnate in this dimension, we will always be challenged by fear-based experiences. How you deal with them is entirely up to you. If you
yeah.
choose to run, or do you choose to face them? So that's that free will that we hear about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the trauma that we face and some of the self-healing that we need to do. And there's a lot,
Yeah,
I mean, there's so much stuff out there about self-healing. How can we recognize it? There'll be people going through life. Is there certain, again, I want to come back to triggers and feelings, anxieties. What are we, do people have breakdowns, of course, and I believe in, that we become unwell through many aspects of life. But even when life is going well for us, how do we heal a trauma? Is it simply by looking at it? Is it simply, do we need to experience it? I mean, I think Sigmund Freud talked about experiencing and going back into the experience helps to heal it. Is that a thing?
absolutely. He's absolutely 100% correct. As I teach in my material, is that we need to go and face that trauma one more time, but we need to face it correctly. Yeah.
I was going to say,
We need to
yeah,
face it in the right way. If we know how to face it in the right way, then
yeah,
it no longer will burden us. It will no longer traumatize us. And as I explain to my clients, eventually your book, when you leave this life, your book of life will be
yeah.
all these images. Oh, look, I remember this, I remember that. They will no longer be traumas. They will only be experiences. That's what we're aiming for. They never disappear, but the pain, we transmute the pain. That's the secret. And that's how we change our personal frequency in our aura. By changing the pain, changing the frequency, so it's no longer painful, but integrated, accepted as part of me, part of my experience, then I can move forward from that. Then I can elevate myself frequency wise. So it's around about that, if that makes sense.
Because, yeah, absolutely. Because if you have an illogical fear, it doesn't matter where it came from, you then build up patterns of behavior off of that energy. Do you
Yeah.
find that some people go so far with their self-healing process that they get to a point where they go, actually, I don't have that anymore. Who am I? And I remember
Yep.
watching the interview. Actually, it was our discussion that we had. We had a chat, and you said you had a little bit of anxiety, and one day it had gone, and you were looking for it, and you couldn't find it. Hang on a minute, it'll come back in a sec. Where's it gone? And that in itself, well, one, it's fantastic. Two, there's got to be an element of your personality, your ego, that suddenly goes, oh my God, now I feel lost. Who am I? Is there a danger of
Yeah.
tripping over yourself with this and going back into old patterns?
If it's done correctly, and if you follow the pattern, and if you follow the how I teach the course, there is no
Yeah,
danger of going back. Absolutely not. Because, and this is one of the questions that my clients ask me. When we deal with fear, we deal with trauma. What about traits? Yeah,
yeah,
personal traits. I'm this kind of person. I'm that kind of person. Doesn't mean I'm fearful. It just means I'm this kind of person. And so we don't change traits, but we change the fear-based experience. We alter that. And because we change the fear-based experience, the traits then change accordingly. And this is what happened to me. Because I changed my fear-based experiences, I faced them and I absolved them and I resolved them, my anxiety, bang, just disappeared like that because of that work I've done. So personal traits change as a result of the inner work we do.
yeah, yeah,
And therefore
yeah.
your experience of this world changes accordingly.
That's fantastic. Is there a little caveat to that though? Because I believe we attract people into our life where we resonate the frequency, you are the person we are. We attract people into our life. So therefore, if we heal and change, do we find that those old relationships break down? And I don't want to be doom and gloom about this because I personally believe if you heal, people around you can also have a better relationship with you. Is there any truth in either of those
Yeah,
aspects?
absolutely. I agree with you. And but there's two things to consider and realize about that is that the people around you have their free will, their own choices, right? So you change
Yeah,
yourself, as I like to say to people, you change yourself, the universe around you changes. And that includes people around you. And the people around you that are exposed in your existence will do one of two things. They will either ask you, how did you change because I want to do the same? Or they will take themselves out of your life because they no longer resonate with your frequency. They find that they can't be with you somehow. They don't understand why,
yeah,
but they just can't be around you anymore. So those people, friends disappear, relationships break, and this has been happening since about 2016, 17, where the truth has come out more and more divorces, more relationships breaking up. People were like realizing, oh my God, I'm in this relationship for the wrong reasons, right? So
yeah,
these are all the symptoms of what I'm talking about. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was talking to Robert Schwartz, And I find it quite interesting in terms of the soul. The soul can sometimes take on a lot more, because we were talking about suicide, and suicide is never planned. It's an option if the soul is just taking on too much and wants to leave, which I find a very interesting concept. But have you come across that with people, that once they heal from one thing, another aspect of self also comes to the surface, that they come back to you, look, this has happened. Is it, what can I do to work for this? Is it the same type of procedure that you teach, or is it a different challenge?
So what you're describing is exactly what I teach, because the module, the formula that I use works throughout all fear-based experiences.
Yeah.
And big part of it is actually facing it. So what I say to people when we do the work is like, we create a list of issues. We challenge the ego to reveal certain issues, because we need to challenge the ego, because it will hide things from us. And this is why therapy at times doesn't work, because the therapists don't actually challenge the ego to expose everything, right? And they think it's resolved, but it hasn't been, because certain aspects haven't been followed. So we need to challenge the ego to the max. And this, when I ask people about, are you sure you can do this course? Can you work with truth? And that's one of the reasons why I ask that question. If we can't work with truth, and we cannot create this list that we can actually eliminate things, right? And as we eliminate things, we start off with the biggest problem and we work on that. When we work through that biggest problem, 9 times out of 10, as we're working through it, through the steps, we find that it opens up something else connected to that.
Yeah.
We add that to the list, right? And we work.
Yeah.
So the list actually is this. It's an active list that moves as we're working with it, right? The bigger things disappear, but the smaller things remain. But the list does become an active list. So as I say, as long as we're living in this dimension, we will always have work to do because of the fear-based experience. But the difference is now we know what to do. That's the difference.
That's awesome. Can we quickly talk about the courses or the work that you're offering? Can you tell us a little bit about what people can expect?
So the course is designed in 3 basic modules. The first, this called the first segment, the first 3 modules are based around facing fear and facing fear-based experiences. Because we need to clear the noise. If we don't clear that noise, that weight that's holding us down, we can't move up to the next level, right? Because we can't hear. It's too noisy. There's too much white noise. So we need to clear that noise. So that's the 3 modules. The next 3 modules will deal with things like dark night of the soul, why it's there, is a transition phase, meditation, which includes breath work. And so now we're starting to use tools to actually develop and to go within effectively and to find out who we are and to start to feel and experience who we actually are. So that includes, I say, meditation and energy work. Energy work is starting to feel, what does it feel like? I have a physical body, but I also have other bodies. How do I connect with those? How do I understand those? So we go through that phase. And then the last phase, the last 3 modules, is based around raising the frequency of experience, allowance, surrender, and moving meditation. The most powerful part of the course, which cannot be taken on unless you've gone through the other levels. And people that have done the course, they say to me, we realize if you turn the course on its head, it wouldn't work. It just would not work, right? So allowance, surrender, different levels of frequency of awareness, of insight. So I teach people how do we get the physical exercises. What is allowance? What is surrender? How do I do it? I walk down the street and I practice that. I look at my world and I see, am I in allowance? Am I in surrender? How do we do that? That's a higher level frequency.
I was going to say that.
Then we bundle all those together. So we bundle, and just to finish, then we bundle all those together, and we use that in the moving meditation. I had a young lady early today who's just finishing the course. She did the moving meditation course. She was absolutely overwhelmed by the experience. She was actually in tears. She said to
Wow.
me, everybody should know about this. And I said, yes, I'm trying to do this, right? She was that taken aback by the experience because she raised her frequency that high that she became emotional.
Yeah.
She experienced what it is like to be in a state of surrender, this black and white place, right? And this is the prime time place of, once you reach that level, this is now where you're ready to communicate, actively communicate with your higher self, which can then take you on to higher and higher experiences.
I was just about to say, Philip, this is about some of the rewards for the work that you put in. The other
Yeah.
thing I was going to say, there is a level of self-mastery about this and discipline. You have to be disciplined and you have to be clear what your focus is. So I know you talked about authenticity and being able to face your fear, but the rewards are great. Potentially the
Yeah,
rewards are great.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so it's an amazing, and to be consciously conscious of your experience, well, it's something that we all hope for. We all try to work towards. But how
Yeah.
long does your course last for? I'm assuming this is something, the different modules. I'm assuming if I was to take all the modules, is that over a 2-year period? Is it a year? How long would it take me to complete that?
The course is approximately 20 hours. And we usually deal with 1 hour, 1.25 hours per week,
Oh,
depending
okay.
on the ability, the agility of the person. And sometimes we can actually, depending on the level of awareness, we can actually, go a little bit quicker. And
Yeah.
I measure this and I can tell, is this person up to it, or do we need to slow down or speed up? But on average, that's how long it takes. So yeah, so we have per module, we have one session where I actually impart the material. Then you go away and you think about it, you do the work on yourself. You come back a week later, approximately, and then we have a feedback session. So I say to you, okay, so what was the experience? What happened? What have you learned so far? And based on the feedback, I can then gauge, have they integrated the knowledge? Because I'm not here to hold hands, I'm here to teach. So I give you
Yeah.
information, you integrate the knowledge, and we move on, right? Because once you've integrated, you take ownership, right? Then we can move on. So that's basically how it works. That's the format.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Sounds exciting. Sounds exciting. See, even though I'm sitting here interviewing you, saying, yes, I've had connections and I've connected to my guides, I still feel that and this is quite a personal thing to reveal, I battle with the ego at times. And there's still fears that I've got to battle with, and there's still things that I need to self-heal. So as a medium, or people that are budding mediums, or people that have just come in, and like I think I said to you before, when we come into mediumship, it's because our first idea of spirituality, or for want of a better word, is seeing a medium demonstrate for a lot of people, seeing there's something else there, not awareness of self so much. And then it opens up, people start to develop, but then their awareness opens up on another level, because our awareness is, of the realms around us. There's so much more. So much more.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
for a lot of people,
yeah,
for me, especially with developing mediumship, you can kind of get sidetracked into focusing on, and this is where we get caught up in the ego. I think a lot of us, sorry guys, I'm going to say this, but a lot of us get caught up because it takes ego to get up on stage and demonstrate. You do need a bit of that. But there's a lot of fear based around it. There's a lot of fear of failure around it. There's a lot of, oh, I'm not good enough. There's all these ego based traits that we are in. So
yep,
it's moving forward with that and trying to move forward. I know for me, with my team, when I'm working, it's almost like Paul the ego has to step to one side, because I'm a bag of nerves, and I've demonstrated many times, but I still get a bag of nerves. But it's like all of a sudden they step in and I'm away. but I still would like to deal with that ego, that pull, that not have. I mean, nerves are a good thing in a way, because it also suggests that I'm not, too confident, because there can be such a thing in mediumship. But again, is that also ego? We could have this conversation all day, Philippe. I'm so sorry. But we do get caught up in those. And I think it would make us all better if we are meant to be the demonstrating medium and bringing messages through, giving people healing through messages from grief, etc. But there's so much more, isn't there? There's so much more that we can all raise above.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. The experience you're describing, I have those experiences sometimes as well, where I, an hour before I'm meant to meet up with a client, and I know I'm going to be dealing with a certain aspect, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, can I do this? Right? Am I going to be able to perform? But I go through the motions, and I get there, and as you know, as soon as you start talking, you get into the flow of things. You switch over, and then spirit sits in, and you channel things, and it all changes, right? So you effectively say to the ego, you're out, I'm in, kind of thing. So, as I said earlier, as long as we're living in this dimension, we will always be challenged.
Yeah,
we will always
that's
be
true.
challenged at this level.
That's true. And I liken it to being almost, gosh, I hope no one's analysing this conversation, I'll be in trouble. But I liken it to being, sometimes when I'm with spirit, I feel like this wise old yogi that has all this knowledge that I have no idea where it comes from, because I'm not academic. I'm I'm dyslexic and other things. So, I have all this knowledge, but I don't have all this knowledge. It's this, I've kind of got this oxymoron, this push pull all the time but I kind of want to deal with some of that stuff within the ego to kind of help me to move forward. I do sit with my guides, but I probably don't do enough self-healing. That's probably my problem.
I completely get that. And what you're talking about, the information and transmitting the information, I went through that phase of doubt and very early on, where I tried to write everything down that I was receiving. And I realized I can't do it. It's just too much, right? And eventually I just gave up. And I
Really?
transitioned into channeling instead of remembering. So now the library's there, and if it's required, the files just get downloaded as required. So
Brilliant.
I've taken off that load, that pressure of, oh my God, I'm going to do this. I need to perform. Now I'm just like, it doesn't matter. What needs to come will come. Yeah. And I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah. Is there anything, because I would like to also let people know where we can find you. Could you, actually, we'll do that now, shall we? Where can we find you? Where can people get in touch with you, Philippe? Philippe. I must get my pronunciation good, because you, like you say, you're living in the UK though. You're based in the UK.
Correct. Yeah. For now,
Am I right?
Who knows what can happen next, right?
Absolutely. Especially with what the communication that you've had this week. Who knows where you're going to be? Very interesting.
Yeah. It's exciting stuff. But so currently you can get hold of me on my website, universaltruths.co.uk. I also have an Instagram and also Universal Truths on Facebook as well. I've got a group where I do live discussions with a colleague of mine that she sees auras, he sees energies, energy centers, chakras, and we do sort of a collaboration between the two of us. So we do a live on a Thursday. So if you want to join the group and have a chat as well, it'd be great.
Sounds good.
And across TikTok and Threads and LinkedIn and sort of spread out a bit everywhere. People want to get in touch. There's no pressure. There's no pressure from anybody. I offer if people get in touch, I offer the first 45-minute discussion consultation, absolutely, free, so that we can actually discuss and see, am I going to be able to help this person? Do they feel that they can connect with myself? So there's this connection that happens, and then we go forward from there.
What we'll do, guys, we'll put all of Philippe's details, where you can find him, websites, lives, chats online. We'll put them in the comments, so you've got direct access. Okay, so don't worry if you didn't get that. Philippe, thank you so much for coming on to Spiritual Talk. But before we go, is there, I've kind of put you on the spot now, but is there one thing that could help people to heal? Is there one thing that really sticks out that you could give a little bit of advice to?
Well, for me, the biggest thing, and I find myself saying this almost automatically, and the first time I said it was actually quite strange, it felt weird, was be brave. Be brave. Take on the challenge. Jump into the fire. It won't burn you. It will only burn away the things that are not you. Be brave. Take that first step. Reach out. You never know what can happen. If you don't reach out, you can't know, right?
Yeah.
So change your life. Change requires change. Change what you're doing.
Yeah.
Reach out. Jump into the fire. Make those changes. Just be brave.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Philippe, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much for coming on Spiritual Talk TV. We can't thank you enough.
Of course, thank you, Paul. Much appreciated. Appreciate the opportunity. As my client said this morning, people need to know, right? And this is the opportunity for myself and the material to gain exposure, to gain awareness. So I'm very grateful, for the opportunity, and I'm sure
Absolutely.
Spirit is looking down and saying, okay, there's somebody else on board, which is great.
Yeah, well, I'm fully behind you and the work that you do. We love it here at Spiritual Talk. Self-help is where it's at, I believe. Again, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back very soon with another great interview. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back, everybody. This is just a quick interlude, or quick short, I should say. Just been talking to Philippe off air, and I would love to share this with you guys. Now, we talk about life outside of the human reality. There's a lot of talk about UFOs in America. Obviously, you've got what's happened in the Senate committee recently. There's a lot of disclosure stuff that's starting to come up and be open. Now, a lot of you guys might be aware of the Greys, and Philippe has some experience with the Greys. So, Philippe, can you share with us your experience with the Greys, please?
So first of all, you talk about disclosure, and I'm going to say to you straight up that it's all bullshit. It's a con. So because of the pressure, they've decided we're going to release a certain amount of information to keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
It's rubbish. It's a setup, right? So forget about that. Yeah. It's all a big con. The behind the door stuff, the back door, it's still happening, right? This is a new. We've been given a little sweetie to say, there you go away for another 20 years, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. So that's that out the way. So yeah, Grush and all those guys. Yeah. It's a setup, keeping people happy, right?
Absolutely.
So there's still the massive agenda behind that. There's still stuff happening. Some of the ships flying around are ours. Some of them aren't ours. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, so with the Greys, so my experience with the Greys, as one of my best friend, tall Grey. There's tall Greys, short Greys. We've known each other for thousands of years, and we've physically met here, and we've met on ships as well, moving my awareness psychically to those experiences we've met as well. Fear involved. The only place there's fear is in this dimension.
Yeah.
Once you move your awareness outside this dimension, there's no fear. So there's none of that. Yeah, we've shaken hands and we've spoken, and absolutely nothing. There's no fear. It's just another person, right? Like you and I talking now. The short Greys, those are like drones. They are created. There's awareness implanted into them, and they're like drones. They're controlled. So they're not like the tall Greys. So it's a different breed altogether. And when people experience abductions and things like that, usually involves the short Greys, right? So it's a different world. It's a different experience. But depending on your level of awareness, depending on your level of experience as a soul, you may or may not be exposed to that frequency level of experience. Maybe down deep in fear, you will have those experiences. If you're higher up and you're moving out of the fear zone, you will not have those experiences. So that's my experience. That's what I understand.
So the greys themselves are a completely different breed to the tall greys, and I'm assuming they have a different agenda as well.
The tall greys tend to be more of a beigey color instead of a grey, whitish color. Different agenda. I'm not 100% comfortable in saying exactly what I think and feel, because I can't say 100% truth about the hybridization of the human race, manipulation of genetics. Yes, I believe manipulation of the genetics has happened throughout history. I believe that mankind is being modified into another species to inhabit other worlds, but that's as far as I'm prepared to go with that.
Yeah.
But I do believe that hybridization is a thing.
Yeah, because a lot of that goes back to this, not Sumerian, the Anunnaki. There's a lot of stuff about the Anunnaki and about them creating hybrids.
So we've evolved, and we've had a lot of help, and the missing link and all that is basically along those lines. There's a lot about human history that we don't actually know. It's been withheld from us. We're not allowed to know, because it would actually destabilize our civilization.
That would make sense. So to move us away from fear of the little greys running around, how do we, I don't want to create fear from people. How do we move away from them? Just come out of fear? Is it as simple as that?
Basically, yeah. You can't put it much simpler than that. If you haven't had a conscious experience of that, then it's unlikely you were at this stage in time. If you had and you were and you did, then you would have somewhere, you would have the awareness, either through dreams or etc. that happened, right? But my experience when I call my experience with Eve visited me, I was physically attacked at night by entities, and I could smell and everything, and I had to actually really go within myself and go, so what do I do now? I went through certain procedures in the way I do things, and I was able to repel, and then I thought I was the big hero. Then I realized that no, I've just done one thing, and then later on it happened again, and then I had to realize that all I had to do was actually to live my frequency above that. The only way of doing that was I had to allow and I had to surrender. And in that moment, during that experience, while I was being physically aggressed, I surrendered. And instantaneously, gone. Since that day, nothing. I found and I realized this is where I need to be. And this has been confirmed to me by Source last year when I had this catch-up call, where my level of frequency now is such that the baddies can jump up, but they can't get up there. The darkness with because we're within the third dimension is called the night. Within the night there is darkness. Those darknesses are just beings, souls that have lost their way, that have lost the light. And all they're looking to do is to, like a moth goes to a flame, as soon as you raise your frequency, you increase your light. And they go, ooh, free energy, whoosh, right? It's just a misunderstanding. So if you raise your frequency above that, eventually those dark energies can't get to you. So that's the aim. And we elevate ourselves higher and higher out of this frequency band where we can be affected.
So
I've been to dangerous places in my life when people have said, oh, did you realize there was a murder there on that? And I said, oh, I was there. I never saw anything. It wasn't my experience. It's not my experience. It's not my universe.
Just to throw in a curveball then. Some people will say,
Yeah.
well, hang on, if we pray to God, they're going to get the dark ones away anyway. By praying, it raises
Well,
our vibration anyway. Would you agree with that?
yes and no.
Okay.
So praying is communicating with the universe. It's the intentional frequency
Yeah.
communication with the universe.
Yeah.
Meditation is the listening to the universe. So we have to understand that mechanism. So if I jump in the water and I swim across the bay and I climb out the other side, am I a different person? No. I need to change the person. I
Yeah.
need to change the frequency of the person, the
Yeah.
frequency of me, the frequency of the ego. And this is what my course deals with. Yeah, you can elevate your mood. It's a temporary fix.
Yeah.
To elevate your frequency, you need to release the weight that's holding you down, those lower frequencies. There's a subtle difference.
Yeah. I love it. And that is so powerful. When we say alleviate our mood, but we can also work on ourselves in terms of being consciously conscious of who we are, in terms of how we
Absolutely.
go through life, how we respond, how we interact, in terms of being less reactive. That
Yeah,
also raises our vibration. But like you say, letting go of
absolutely.
fear, it increases that. Yeah. Philippe,
But
it's
being
been
being
absolutely amazing.
reactive,
Sorry.
being reactive, there is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the reason we react is because of pre-programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to undo that programming so we no longer react, but we now act consciously.
Yeah.
There's that
Yeah.
difference. So that's the huge aspect that needs to be understood. Yeah, once you start acting consciously, this is when everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we keep coming around doing it all again, Philippe. We get caught up in
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
But listen, as far as ETs and those things, there's a lot of good people out there. My experiences are all positive. There's people
Yeah.
out there
Yeah.
that are wanting to help us, that are here to help us, that connect with us. There's a lot of help out there. We just need to reach out and just, enough of the conspiracy theories, enough of the fear-based stuff.
Yeah, what
Let's
did
elevate ourselves above that.
yeah, but Hollywood does that, doesn't it? I mean, what was the first thing we saw on Independence Day when the aliens came down to Earth? There was a lot of what you would call free-thinking people with banners. We love you, come to Earth. And what did Hollywood do? The aliens blew them up straight away. What does that do? It
Yeah,
creates fear straight away within our, and as we're all connected, it creates that fear within our psyche. It's there.
yeah. And that's because fear sells, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's the only reason that sells more. It sells better than comedy, which is quite a sad thing, really.
It is.
Because
Yeah.
actually, comedy is actually better for you than the fear stuff. Comedy is what
Yeah.
raises your frequency.
Yeah. And I can
Having a
concur
good,
with
having
that.
a
I
good
was
laugh.
very ill once. Yeah, I was very ill once, and my sister sent me a load of stand-up comedians on a CD, and it really helped me to get over my illness. So, laughter,
Yeah,
laughter, and light really raises your vibration and helps you to recover as well. Philippe,
yeah.
thank you so
You
much.
you can't.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
We
no
can't thank you
worries.
enough.
Yeah, I want just
There's not many
yeah,
people.
just one,
Sorry. Yeah,
just one last thing quickly, just to
yeah, of
help
course.
people, right? Is that when you're feeling down and you really want to change your life and you don't know how, right? Step one, find a way to elevate your mood. And people do that by either going out doing a sport or doing something they love. So elevate
Yeah,
your mood first. Once your mood is elevated, then you can see more clearly how to proceed next. You can't see clearly through depression, through anxiety. Elevate your mood
yeah,
first, and then you can see clearly how to stay out of that state. So yeah, just a
yeah,
last thought.
yeah. I, any self-help is appreciated. Philippe, we can't thank you enough
Yeah.
for taking your time out this evening. It's been, well, I mean, even when we came off air, I had to press record again because our conversations just go off in different directions. And it's great to have a like-minded person that is open to kind of record this stuff. It's great. It's great to hear from you. Thank you so much.
I'm I'm around anytime, as I said to you earlier, to do, help you with talks or anything. What you see is what you get. I'm here. I give you the truth, and hopefully somewhere it helps somebody, and that's the intention.
Well, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.